Welcome to the last session of my lecture, Chapter 17. Chapter 17 discusses about how to design and manage an integrated marketing channels or intermediaries. Integrated marketing is the process of combining two or more marketing channels. For example, direct marketing and direct selling to deliver a consistent and relevant brand experience to your target audiences. So in this chapter we examine marketing intermediaries or channels primarily from the viewpoint of manufacturers that want to build and manage marketing channels. There are basically 8 key topics of discussion in chapter 17. We begin by discussing what marketing channels or intermediaries are, their respective and particular functions, and the motivation for their application. Then we discuss the level of channels that exist to reaching markets and how we make a systematic selection of channels to use at different contexts. Last, there are dramatic changes currently been happening within channels, for example, the coming of vertical or horizontal marketing systems. So we devote time into discussing these new trends in marketing channel. Before closing chapter 17, we will see the potential source of conflict in channel systems and how these are being solved. So, most producers nowadays do not sell their goods directly to final users. There are what we call marketing channels or intermediaries that stand between producers and final users that perform selling of goods or services, but also engage in a variety of other functions. So these are the functions of marketing channels. For example, let's consider HP, the multinational information technology company that produces PCs, printers, monitors. In the case of HP, then they use their sales force to sell to large accounts, or the outbound telemarketing to sell to medium-sized accounts, or direct mail with an inbound phone number to sell to small accounts, or retailers to sell to still smaller accounts, and the internet to sell specialty items. So HP uses these different channel levels or channels to target different segment of buyers or different need states for one buyer. So this is what we call multi-channel marketing, which is that there is a use or the use of two or more marketing channels with the final objective of reaching customer segments in one market area. And the main purpose of multi-channel marketing is to achieve the goal of delivering the right products in the right places in the right way at the least cost. As also noted in the HP example, marketing channels, of course, could have many important functions in addition to lying between manufacturers and the final endpoint customers and facilitating purchase or transactions. Let's see some. For example, they are a means to gather information about potential and current customers, competitors, and other actors and forces in the marketing environment. So they are used as a means of collecting important information or marketing insight. Or through channels, manufacturers can also engage in promotion where they become able to develop and disseminate persuasive communications so that they stimulate purchasing. Intermediaries also negotiate and reach agreements, especially on price and in addition of price other terms so that transfer of ownership or possession can be affected. Intermediaries or channels, they also engage in acquiring funds and they can finance their own inventories at different levels in the marketing channel. So Why does a producer delegate some of the selling job to channels or intermediaries that give away its control over how and to whom its products are sold? This is a very important question to ask. And the possible explanation for this is because adding more channels most of the time gives companies three important benefits. So the first benefit is lower channel cost. Selling online or by catalog and phone is expected to be more cheaper than using personal selling to reach small customers, for example. And for firms that have very limited financial resources to carry out direct marketing, then adding such cheaper channels is advantageous. The second is the ability to do more customized selling. For example, by adding a technical sales force to sell complex equipment, a firm can increase their customer satisfaction and ultimately they could become or they could be able to boost value and earn more. The third is increased market coverage and visibility issues. With more marketing channels, more customers can become aware of the brand and they be able to shop for the company's products in more places. For example, consider a gum producer. A gum producer would not find it practical to establish small retail gum shops throughout the world or to sell gum online or by mail order. So it is easier to work through the extensive network of privately owned distribution organizations. Producers therefore have a variety of means to reaching to consumers, and depending on the length of the channel or the length of intermediary levels, these means divide into four types. There is this first one, which is zero level channel, also sometimes called a direct marketing channel, that consists of a manufacturer selling directly to the final customer. And the major examples are mail order, online selling, or door-to-door sales, and manufacturer-owned stores. The second type of channel is a one-level channel that contains one selling intermediary, such as a retailer. And there is also a two-level channel that contains two intermediaries, typically a wholesaler and a retailer. And in industries, for example, like meat packing, for example, main wholesalers sell to essentially small-scale wholesalers named jobbers, who again sell to small retailers. So such type of alternatives or channel types are called a three-level channel. So among these types of channels, which ones should producers consider? That is the next logical question that manufacturers or producers should ask. And this choice is dependent on three factors, which are the analysis of customer needs and wants, and channel objectives or constraints, and the identification of major alternatives. We are going to see each briefly. First is the analysis of customer needs. Different consumers have different needs during the purchase process, and they might choose these channels based on a variety of reasons. For example, like price, product assortment, or convenience, as well as their own shopping goals. For example, some consumers might prefer to browse a catalog before visiting a store, or they might kind of incline to test drive a car at a dealership before ordering online. Therefore, if a producer wants to be successful in choosing the right channel, then they should first know the interest and need of the consumer. Second considerations in choosing channels are knowing about channel objectives, because different channels have different objectives and these objectives vary with product characteristics. For example, let's see few practical examples. think of bulky products such as building materials that require channels that minimize the shipping distance and the amount of handling. Or think of products that require installation or maintenance services such as heating and cooling systems that are usually sold and maintained by the company or by franchise dealers. Or think of high unit value products such as generators and turbines that are often sold through a company sales force rather than intermediaries. So third issue of consideration in the choice of channels is to look at the strengths and weaknesses of channels and kind of making a trade-off. So each channel, from sales force to agents or dealers or telemarketing, each channels, they do have their own unique strengths and weakness. For example, Salesforce can handle complex products and transactions, but they are expensive. Whereas if we consider the internet is inexpensive, but may not be as effective for complex products. In the other hand, distributors can kind of create sales, but the company loses direct contact with customers. So the producer kind of trades off among the strengths and weaknesses in choosing channels. Marketing channels are characterized by very continuous, dynamic, and sometimes dramatic change. And one of the drivers of change is digitalization that kind of is transforming the structure of businesses and their level of collaboration. And one very common trend in this regard is the shift from conventional marketing channels to vertical, horizontal, or multi-channel marketing systems. Conventionally or traditionally, we were used to marketing channel consisting of only an independent producer, independent wholesaler, and independent retailer, where each is a separate business seeking to maximize its own profits. No channel member have complete or substantial control over other members. But there is also a trend in marketing systems that is vertical marketing system, or sometimes called or shortened as VMS. So in VMS, it is that the producer, wholesaler, and retailer act as a unified system, and such systems have become the dominant mode of distribution across the world. For example, in the US alone, 70% to 80% of the market is integrated as such. I do not currently have the data for Norway. So in this integration, one channel member, commonly called the channel captain or the channel steward, owns or franchises the others, or it does have so much power over others. And depending on the type of franchise or ownership, VMS can be a corporate type where the owner combines successive stages of production and distribution under single ownership, or a contractual where independent firms at different levels of production and distribution kind of come together and integrate their programs on a contractual basis to obtain more sales impact than they could have achieved alone. And the third type of VMS is administered relationship. An administered relationship is when the owner coordinates successive stages of production and distribution through the size and power of one of the members. Another channel development trend is the horizontal marketing system, in which two or more unrelated companies that kind of lacks the capital, the know-how, the production resource or marketing resource to venture alone, or are afraid of the risk of venturing alone, they kind of put together resources or programs and they work together on a temporary or sometimes permanent basis, or create a joint venture company to exploit an emerging marketing opportunity. For example, Many supermarket chains have arrangements with local banks to offer in-store banking. And one of the very famous kind of venture in this regard is Citizens Bank venturing with supermarkets. So Citizens Bank, US-based bank, has more than 500 branches in supermarkets, making up roughly up to 1/3 of its branch network. All marketing channels have the potential for conflict resulting from mainly four origins. First is a conflict arising when channels across the system has colliding or opposite goals. That is what we call goal incompatibility. For example, a manufacturer may want to achieve rapid market penetration as their marketing strategy through a low price policy, whereas dealers, in contrast, may prefer to work with high margins and pursue short run profitability. So these incompatible goals of different channels in a system create conflict. Second type of conflict arises when the roles and rights of channels is poorly defined. For example, a producer of laptops may sell laptops to large accounts through its own sales force, but its licensed dealers may also be trying to sell to large accounts. So in this example, there is kind of no clear role of through who should the producer sell large accounts to. And this might become a source of conflict. Third causes of conflict in channels are differences in perception. So another good example reflecting on perceptual differences is that, for example, a manufacturer may be optimistic about the short-term economic outlook and they might want dealers to carry higher inventory, while the dealers may be pessimistic with that idea. For example, conflict is common in the beverage category as a result of perceptual differences between manufacturers and their distributors because they have different perceptions about what an optimal advertising strategy should be. So the manufacturer might think other way and the retailer might have other perception about optimal advertising strategy. Last is the conflict that comes as a result of intermediaries' dependence on the manufacturer. For example, consider exclusive dealers such as auto dealers. Price of a product is dependent on the manufacturer's product and pricing decisions. Therefore, we can say that the fortune of dealers is dependent on the decisions of manufacturers that becomes a source of conflict. So, how are such conflicts addressed or managed when they arise across channels? Of course, some channel conflict can be constructive and lead to better adaptation to a changing environment, but too much is dysfunctional. So some conflicts are better addressed before they really happen. For example, when conflicts are believed to arise as a result of producers adding newer channels on existing channels, then a dual compensation system is integrated. So what is dual compensation? Dual compensation is an agreement for paying existing channels for sales made through new channels. So as an example, if an insurance company starts selling insurance online in addition to sales through agents, it might agree to pay agents a given percent of commission for face-to-face service to customers who got their quotes online. Other and most of conflict management techniques kind of takes place at the onset of the conflict. For example, at the onset of conflict, channel members can come to an agreement on the fundamental or superordinate goal they are jointly seeking, whether it is survival, market share, high quality, or customer satisfaction related. Another important method of conflict resolution is employee exchange, where exchanging persons between two or more channel levels takes place. For example, Tesla's executives might agree to work for a short time in some dealerships and some dealership owners might work in Tesla's dealer policy department. Thus, participants can grow to appreciate each other's point of view. Co-optation is an effort by one organization to win the support of the leaders of another by including them in advisory councils, boards of directors, and the like. So if an organization treats invited leaders seriously and listens to their opinions, then co-optation can reduce conflict. So this is also one other common ways of managing conflict. So when conflict is rather become chronic or acute, the parties then may need to resort to stronger means. For example, diplomacy is one of the ways of managing conflicts that happens in the strongest terms. So diplomacy takes place when each side sends a person or group to meet with its counterpart to resolve the conflict. And mediation relies on a neutral third party skilled in conciliating the two parties' interests. And in arbitration, two parties agree to present their arguments to one or more arbitrators and accept their decision. Go over the following questions that brainstorm on the key concepts discussed in this chapter. I posted it on Canvas as a chapter 17 class Arbide, and if you are interested submitting, then I can give feedbacks on your replies.